In this episode of Alien Agenda, we revisit the Roswell crash and dive into astonishing claims made by Ariel, a surviving alien. Alongside deathbed confessions, government cover-ups, and secret organizations like Majestic 12, Colonel Gene explores the intriguing connection between alien technologies and human advancements. This thought-provoking session challenges listeners to reconsider the reality of UFOs and extraterrestrial encounters. Here's Colonel Gene.
Hi, folks. This is Colonel Gene again for Alien Agenda. Are you ready to return to Roswell and learn what the surviving alien from Roswell crash told Corman McElroy? As you will recall in our last session, the Corman was assigned to interview the alien called Ariel that survived the Roswell crash. Let's get started, folks. At first, communication was via images, but Ariel was quickly able to master English, although all the communications with the Corman was done telepathically. Ariel's mastery of English enabled McElroy to understand the alien much more clearly. She claimed that she was from a race called the Dominion and that she was an officer, pilot, and engineer stationed on a base located in an asteroid belt that surrounded the Earth. Although Ariel had a strong female presence, she did not have a gender, but said she was rather a robot with no internal organs, but rather circuitry systems that were controlled by other intelligent beings. The account contained in the book The Alien Interview was based on documents provided by Matilda O'Donnell McElroy and edited by Lawrence A. Spencer and published in 2008. This book includes 255 detailed footnotes that cover 164 pages. At the end of this book, the believability of the interviews is enhanced by the extensive documentation contained in these 255 footnotes. Although I do not intend to detail the numerous interviews and the questions that were provided by the intelligent officers, I want to give you some idea from the official transcript of the 509th Bomb Group at Roswell Airfield, January the 9th, 1947. Are you injured? Answer, no. Do you need food or water? Answer, no. Do you have any special environmental needs, such as air, temperature, atmospheric chemical content, air pressure, or waste elimination? No, I am not a biological being. What is the weapons capability of your people? Very destructive. Why did your spacecraft crash? Struck by an electric discharge. Why was your spacecraft in this area? Investigating the burning clouds of radiation from nuclear explosions. Have you visited Earth previously? Yes, long before humans were here. Are there other intelligent life forms besides yourself in the universe? Everywhere. However, we are at the highest level of intellectual development. Each of you will have to decide whether or not this interview is real. I will say, however, after looking at the book that I just described, it does appear very legitimate. I thought it was especially interesting that this being was a non-biological agent and probably would explain her survival of the crash. In 1947, Lieutenant General Nathan Twining was dispatched to investigate the Roswell incident. Under Twining, General Roger Ramey, who was the director of Air Force Intelligence, told a Lieutenant Walter Haupt to fabricate a story about the Roswell crash, that it was in fact nothing but a weather balloon. In 2002, Lieutenant Haupt, on his deathbed, confessed that the U.S. Army Air Force had ordered him to create this cover story about the weather balloon. After Haupt confirmed that he was of sound mind by reciting his personal information, Haupt said he met with several of superiors that day of the incident to discuss the debris field left behind by the crash. He said samples of the wreckage were passed around the table. It was unlike any material he had ever seen in his life. Pieces which resembled metal foil, paper thin yet extremely strong, and the pieces had the unusual markings and length, and when you handled them, they returned back to their normal shape. No one was able to identify this crash debris. Haupt ended his confession with, "I am convinced that what I personally observed was some sort of craft, and its crew was from outside the Earth. I have not been paid nor given anything of value to make this statement, and it is true to the best of my recollection. Lieutenant General Twining's memo to Brigadier General George Shaglin corroborated Haught's deathbed confession decades earlier. As with Haught's deathbed confession, the entirety of Twining's memo has been included in an appendix of a book that I'm going to publish this summer called Are They Out There? Twining wrote that these discs were something real and not visionary or fictitious. In the same memo, he roughly matched Haught's description of the disc-shaped craft and its dimensions, but in a somewhat greater detail. Twining did indicate that the crash may have been due to some kind of natural occurrence, such as a meteorite coming down, but he did not seem to invest too much in this idea. The Roswell incident was eventually brought to President Harry Truman's attention. President Truman then authorized Secretary of Defense James Forstall to establish a top-secret group designated to investigate and recover the extraterrestrial craft. The group was to be named Majestic 12. After Forstall's visit to Roswell in 1947, there was a reported and marked change in his behavior. Just 2 years later, in 1949, Forstall resigned from his position. Soon after, his mental and physical condition deteriorated, and he was placed in a naval hospital for approximately a month. Eventually, Forrester's brother demanded Forrester be released from the hospital and informed officials that he was going to remove him either way. The night before Forstall's brother issued his demand, James Forstall fell to his death from the 16th story room at the Naval Hospital where he was being kept. Given the secrecy around Roswell and the apparent presence of so many important events, it is possible that Forstall was killed to maintain his secrets. Forstall had been a valuable deathbed confession if it had been given. However, we unfortunately will never know because he was unable to provide such information. Forstall seemed to believe that the public had a right to know of the United States' involvement with UFOs and extraterrestrial discoveries. According to documents, he was often at odds with other members of Majestic 12. However, there was never any definite proof of Forstall's death was a murder or that he was related to any conflicts with the group. Forstall's death was declared a suicide by the Navy hospital staff, and no further investigation into his death took place. There are some who claim the story about Majestic 12 was a hoax and a cover-up, but the people that made up Majestic 12 were real, and the incident about Secretary Forstall was correct. He did die that evening by falling from the 16th floor of his room, and points to the truth that this super secret group, Majestic 12, existed, and that the events surrounding Roswell are true. 30 years after the incident, retired Major Jesse Maxwell, who was at Roswell when the crash occurred, came forward and admitted that the crash did in fact occur and that he had been directed to cover up the incident. Maxwell claims at the time of the crash, he saw the debris from the ship itself. The dead aliens moved into an autopsy facility at White Sands, New Mexico. Maxwell also claims that some of the debris removed from the crash site remained at White Sands, along with 2 of the dead aliens. The ship and 3 other dead aliens were transported to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, which is long thought to be a repository for UFO crashes and material. In 1955, the United States Air Force technician named Norma Garden was stationed at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Her job was to catalog items taken from alien crashes. She cataloged more than 1,000 items from UFO crashes, but was sworn to secrecy about what she had seen. Airman Gardner, on her deathbed, said the government could no longer keep her from telling the truth, and she all but said she saw a 4-foot gray being in tanks at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. She also claimed there were autopsy reports from the gray beings. Even the popular term extraterrestrials and grays can be traced to the Roswell incident. The fact that there were autopsies also seems to indicate that some of the alien bodies at Roswell were biological, unlike Ariel, who claimed she was a robot. In 1955, we jump to 1961. Familiar name, Lieutenant Colonel Philip Corso, who was freshly assigned to head the Foreign Technology Desk in the Office of Army Research and Development at the Pentagon. Prior to that assignment, Corso was under General MacArthur in Korea and later the National Security Council under Dwight Eisenhower, who Corso knew personally. As the head of the Foreign Technology Desk, Lieutenant Colonel Corso reported directly to the Chief of the Army Research and Development in the Pentagon, Lieutenant General Arthur G. Trudeau. Corso served in that office from 61 to 63, and Colonel Corso was in charge of the items that had been retrieved from the Roswell crash. He was responsible to provide these materials to American companies who were working with the government to help further the development of such things as microchips, night vision devices, fiber optics, and Kevlar used in bulletproof vests as described in the book The Day After Roswell. The truth of Roswell from the evidence is very convincing, and when combined with the 1941 and the 1953 crashes, I think the truth cannot be denied. I hope you have enjoyed our look at Roswell and will tell your friends about our podcast. I also hope that this session will stimulate your interest to look even more into Roswell and to the whole UFO question. Stay safe until we meet again on Alien Agenda in our quest to answer that basic question, are they out there?
Gene P. Abel, a retired Army colonel and best-selling author, has excelled in military, finance, education, and public service, with a Penn State education and leadership roles in both government and nonprofits. He now lives in South Jersey, continuing to write, serve his community, and enjoy family life. You may visit his website at www.genepabelbooks.com.